Welcome, everybody.
Hi, everybody. So we're sorry we're running a little bit late today. Cade's on his way and Dan's here. He's going to school us on some cool info. I'm not quite sure what it is, but I'm going to let him go with that. As of announcements, session 2 is coming up June 2nd and 3rd. I think I've got that right. So be keeping your eyes open for information on that. That's all I've got. Dan, I'll let you take the show.
Awesome. Well, I'm picking up. So Regan started a discussion on HPA Axis, and so this week we're going to be talking about the HPA axis and how it relates to gut function. So just to kind of to dig into there, it's a super, we got a super dynamic pathway there. That crosstalk between the brain, the hypothalamus, the adrenals, the pituitary gland, and the gut. So there's a lot of crosstalk there. Um, when we're talking about the majority of that communication is going from the vagus nerve. So we have a two-way communication, and it's really interesting when we start identifying that and looking at this communication and the disruptions there, and it's very quick. When we're having disruptions in this whole process, because most people when they have like fear or stress issues, they talk about they feel it in their gut, right? And I always make a joke that some people shouldn't trust their gut because I've tested it and I know what's in there. But the uh, the crosstalk between the brain and the gut is such a critical piece, and that vagus nerve plays a massive role. There was a really good research study where we looked at rats, and I said we, like I ran the study. I just read research. Uh, so they took these rats, and what they did is they took a little bitty electrical probe and they shocked different areas of the cerebral cortex. And what they found was in 36 to 48 hours, almost all of the rats who had previously no digestive issues, they started exhibiting issues like irritable bowel, ulcerative colitis, Crohn's disease, some triggered autoimmunity, but there was increased permeability in the gut. And so one of the things is when we have this massive stress response or we have any disruption in the balance, when we kick into this sympathetic response, that upregulated sympathetic tone in the vagus nerve, the signaling that it gives to our gut immediately increases the permeability and the motility of the gut. And so that immediately is going to create some problems. And then long term, we get chronic damage of the intestinal lining. Instead of having paracellular damage where we just have leaky gut, because of the inflammatory response that is chronically being triggered, you can actually start to get transcellular destruction, which means you're actually damaging the tissue itself. So the crosstalk's crazy. And then there's the communication back. So when there's normal functioning physiology, the brain is stimulating the migrating motor complex in the gut. And so our swallowing is normal, digestion's normal, normal acids, normal pancreatic enzymes, normal pH levels, along with proper bile acid release. And so that is the brain stimulating all these responses, and we can see that when we start breaking down these nerve pathways of how this normal function is supposed to be. We start chewing. So our cranial nerves 5, 7, 9, and 10 are involved. The 10 is going to be that vagus nerve. But 5 and 7, we're going to have our facial nerve, our trigeminal nerve. So chewing, and 9's our swallowing and our tongue. And then 10 is that vagus nerve. So swallowing in the chest stimulates that digestive process. So we got to have this really good process going. And then we start having the motility through the intestinal lining and proper blood flow and circulation through the intestinal lining. That's a key piece, because a lot of times when we're talking about chronic gut issues, or maybe someone has chronic constipation, one of the main things that we have to consider there, this is a big thing in Chinese medicine, is a lot of times we'll see constipation with blood deficiency. So always think about circulation through the intestinal tract too. So that's that natural process. So we have massive amount of absorption occurring in the small intestine. And then as we get to the large intestine, we start to find bacteria there. The bacteria further process, right? And are pushing things through. And just to take a kind of a step back, when we get that bile release, bile is produced by the healthy liver functions and the liver going through phase 1 and phase 2 detoxification. The end products most of the time is going to be bile. The toxins, the way we get rid of those and they're made water soluble is via the bile. So the bile excretion has multiple roles. Not only does it maintain the sterility of the small intestine, it activates glucagon-like peptide 1, G-coupled proteins to regulate blood sugar. It's also regulating the health of the microbiome itself and the gut bacteria diversity. So we got multiple mechanisms going on there. Cade.
Hey, sorry guys.
I
made it.
Yeah, we were just talking about bile. It was good. You showed up at the right time. Talking about someone who's got a strong bile. Let's talk about Cade. No. So yeah, I was just digging in, picking up on from Regan talking about the HPA axis and then bringing the gut into that. So we're just reviewing normal physiology of the gut function when the brain is properly working. So anything you want to add to that?
I'll let you keep jamming and I'll add to it later. But yes, the gut is very important for your HPA axis.
Yeah. So when we have this normal physiology, we're getting rid of waste. The gut motility is proper. We have our bowel movements. Well, that microbiome is really key here, because when everything's happy in the gut, we have positive, feedback. The efferent pathways back up to the brain via the vagus nerve. So there's you get a lot of neurological tissue in the gut. And so heavy in its own nervous system, the mesenteric nervous system. So send a lot of signal back up to the brain. And so that's like that normal function. And in the gut, when it's really healthy, it's converting our thyroid hormone about 20% into its T3. We're making a lot of neuropeptides, so there's a lot of neuromodulation there. Serotonin, 93% in the gut. We're also producing GABA, acetylcholine, dopamine. Those are being produced by gut bacteria in our interchromaffin cells, and they're aligned in the gut lining. So these things are being released. We got a lot of short chain fatty acids and postbiotics being produced, and that just kind of helps maintain the whole system. The gut bacteria is properly recycling and detoxifying our hormone levels. So we're also going to get some neuropeptides being produced in the gut, like BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, and vasoactive intestinal polypeptides, so VIP. So when we have this process, so the gut being stimulated by the brain and the pituitary, right? We're regulating all this hormone cycling. We're stimulating the gut. The gut's properly working, digesting our food, getting rid of our waste. It's an intelligent filter, right? Getting rid of waste and absorbing proper nutrients, balancing out hormones. We're manufacturing a lot of products in the gut. So that overall, that's a really good idea. And so, there's so many axes. It's not just the gut-brain axis. There's the gut liver, the gut thyroid, the gut pancreas, the gut brain. So there's all these different axes. It's a very interrelated web. And one of the things that we can't ignore in this whole process is that the thyroid fits in there too. So the HPA gut thyroid axis, I think, and then you got the immune axis. I mean, honestly, I don't know which axis is my favorite, but they just keep loading and loading up. So, there's so many. So, I mean, what do you do? How do you choose one over the other? So that is normal function. Now let's talk about when we get a heightened HPA response, right? We have cortisol, we have a stress response. Well, first thing you have to think is, what is that stress response's job? Right? So when you have a an elevated stress response, you'll want to be able to flight or fight, and the only time, I like people saying about shit myself. Well, that's the option, right? When it's time to fight or run, get rid of the excess load real fast. Runners will do that sometimes, marathon runners, but you're actually going to shut down motility in the gut. So you're going to stop absorption, you're going to stop excretion. And then one of the big things, the power of the gut is in the movement. That's how the gut does its job, it maintains motility. We don't want anything sitting in the gut putrefying, breaking down. We want to maintain that we're producing the gut peptides, the gut hormones. We want to make sure all those things are being properly regulated, right? And then also that gut immune system is really key. So a little bit of stress, you get a heightened stress response, decreased circulation, slow down motility, slow down absorption. So you slow down digestion. So you think about that long term, that's a problem, right? So let's just take cortisol, for instance. So we have heightened cortisol. The cortisol, we know it decreases circulation in the brain. Short term, it's anti-inflammatory. Long term, same process. Another way to say anti-inflammatory is immune suppressant, right? So long term, you get immune suppressant. Eventually, you'll get lower production of white blood cells, right? You'll actually start to get leukopenia or leukocytopenia. So we'll see a drop in white blood cells, but we start getting a decrease in proper stomach acid production. So pH in the stomach drops. And then we start to lose prostaglandin pathways, which actually build the mucous membrane in the gut. So you're going to get GERD and acid reflux. And then the motility drops. So now you have a situation where you don't have the migrating motor complex, the motility is not working, so absorption's compromised. You're losing the sterility effect of the HCl and the bile acids. You're not breaking down your pancreatic enzymes. And then immediately cortisol damages, it thins the mucus in the gut, not just in the stomach where you're going to get more likely to get like ulcers or gastritis, but also all through the gut lining. So you lose that first line of defense. You start to activate a chronic immune response because your gut loses sensitivity or it loses oral tolerance. So you start losing, this ability to take in these foods, right? So and maintain that sensitivity. So it's easy to get overgrowth now. So people a lot of times will ask about overgrowth. And it's an important discussion to have when it comes to brain health or the HPA axis, because sometimes when that HPA axis is chronic and it's dysfunctional, the gut is such a critical piece in this whole puzzle because we're not getting that movement. We get dysbiosis, and that creates more stress and disrupts the process even further. We start getting nutrient deficiencies. We'll start getting chronic constipation or diarrhea, depends on what's going on. You'll lose tolerance to your foods. You start to get an upregulated immune response, and that starts to create brain inflammation. So there's a lot of different stuff. So let's kind of break a few of these things down. So first, if we can't produce enough acids and maintain proper pH, we get overgrowth. And that causes dysbiosis. Gram-negative loves to overgrow. You'll often see a lot more gram-negative overgrowing, which are a lipopolysaccharide producing species. And that's a bad thing, right? Because those can create chronic inflammation. So if your stress response is up, the mature monocytes in your gut, your dendritic cells, they're constantly gathering proteins, analyzing them, and telling the body, is this safe or is it not, right? So a heightened stress response puts a lot more load on that. And just like cortisol lowers the mucous membrane, it also lowers SIGA. And SIGA's role is not only to maintain pH level, to maintain inflammation, but it also slows down how many things are being presented to those dendritic cells. So when the stress response decreases the lining in the gut, the immune system starts to get overwhelmed. And that creates a lot of problems really fast. When you have overpresentation to your dendritic cells of proteins, when those become excessively active, they immediately activate the monocytes in the brain, which are your glial cells. So you'll get glial cell activation. So you start getting inflammation in the brain just because you've either overpresented dendritic cells with proteins, or you've stressed out the gut, you've damaged the lining. So those dendritic cells are working overtime to keep things from getting in.
Hey everybody, Regan Archibald here. I hope you enjoyed the Go Wellness show and maybe learned a couple things you could apply to your practice. If you're a healthcare entrepreneur who wants to work in an academic think tank with like-minded humans who are just like you, looking to provide better service, better quality of care for your patients, reach us at info@gowellness.com and we're happy to do a free practice analysis for you.